Vera sets the pen down, and her hand closes around my wrist in the same motion. Not clinical contact, not the reflex of a woman checking a pulse to time it. Her fingers settle around the bones of my wrist with the specific deliberateness of a woman who has known exactly what she was going to do for considerably longer than she has been sitting at this table. And her thumb finds the inside, finds the pulse point, and stays. My breath catches, not in my throat, lower. The specific anatomy of it is somewhere in the intercostal space between my fourth and fifth ribs, a tightening that my own specialty has trained me to locate with embarrassing precision, and what it means is not a clinical question. Vera watches this happen. She watches it the way she watches an abnormal reading. Quiet, complete attention, no performance of surprise, because she is not surprised. And then she says quietly, 2 years. Not a question, not a complaint. An accurate diagnosis delivered at close range. If you want to hear uncensored too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. Tell us where you're watching from and subscribe. 2 years and 4 months ago, I was seated in the third row of Aldrich Conference Room B for the Autumn Cardiopulmonary Overlap Symposium, which is the kind of sentence that sounds like the beginning of a CME module and is not, except that at the time it felt exactly like that. I had my notebook, I had my coffee, I had the specific dense alertness of a person who had been on the overnight and had not slept and was running on hospital caffeine, and the genuine interest of someone who had spent 8 years building a practice around the intersections between cardiac output and respiratory compromise. And I was going to be fine. I was going to take notes. I was going to ask one precise question during the Q&A, because I always do, and I was going to go back to my floor, and that was going to be the day. The symposium coordinator came in at 9:05 and distributed the seating assignment revision, which is a thing that happens at this hospital because Dr. Ellison has been organizing these joint conferences since 1987, and he has strong feelings about cross-departmental table mixing, and no one has successfully argued him out of them. The revision put me at table 7. I moved to table 7, I put my coffee down, I arranged my notebook. I was being very organized about all of this, which I do when I am tired, and the woman who came in at 9:12 and sat down across from me did not announce herself or make any particular noise about her arrival, which meant I had approximately 4 seconds of looking at the seating card before I looked up. I had known Vera Castillo by her published work before I knew her by her face. There is a class of cardiac overlap presentations. The ones where pulmonary hypertension, secondary to left heart disease, creates a management paradox that makes most treatment algorithms actively counterproductive. Where I had changed my clinical approach 2 years before the symposium based on a paper in the European Heart Journal that had reframed the differential in terms that made sense in a way most of the literature did not. The paper was dense and rigorous and had the specific quality of work written by someone who was more interested in getting the answer right than in being the person who got the answer right, which is rarer than it should be. The corresponding author was Vera Castillo, MD, Department of Cardiology. I had cited it 8 times. I had recommended it to 4 residents. I had, on one occasion, used it as the actual foundation of a consult recommendation, in a way that required me to explain a cardiologist's paper to a cardiologist, which is the kind of thing that goes either very well or very badly, and it had gone well because the cardiologist in question had read it too. I had not, in any of these encounters with the work, anticipated that the work would have been written by someone who also looked like Vera Castillo. This is the point at which I will note, for the record, that I am a clinician with 8 years of post-residency practice and a specialty that requires a specific tolerance for ambiguity. And I am not a person who is typically destabilized by physical appearances. I register them, I file them, I move on. This is standard operating procedure, and it has served me well, and it served me adequately in the first 4 seconds of looking at Vera Castillo across conference table 7, in which I registered long dark hair, angular, precise face, the quality of stillness that some people carry as posture, and she carried as something more fundamental, the kind of stillness that is not relaxed, but is the opposite of it. A calibrated stillness, the stillness of a person who has decided what they're going to do with every part of their body before they do it. And then Dr. Ellison began the introductions. Dr. Castillo, cardiology. I believe you'll find your table partner is Dr. Nguyen, pulmonology. Vera looked at me. The look was direct and brief and carried the specific quality of a woman completing a file she had already mostly built. She said, "I know your paper on CTEPH misclassification, the methodology on the VQ scan cohort." I said, "I know your paper on the PHLHD paradox, the treatment algorithm reframe." She said, "I've used it." I said, "So have I." This was, objectively, a professional exchange between two senior clinicians who were familiar with each other's published work. This was not remarkable. This happened at every overlap conference. I had had this exact exchange in this exact room 6 times in the past 4 years with 6 different colleagues, and had found each of them professionally interesting and personally unremarkable. What I did not do with any of those 6 colleagues was sit across a conference table for 3 hours and feel, with a clarity that my respiratory system expressed despite not being consulted, that I was in proximity to someone who occupied a fundamentally different category. I noted this. I filed it in the wrong location. I went back to my floor. She went back to hers. And we were professionally adjacent for 2 years, which is the thing that happens at a teaching hospital the size of this one, because the floors are different, and the call schedules are different, and the ward rounds only overlap when the patients overlap, and the patients do overlap. Cardiopulm is a continuous working relationship by design, but the overlap is managed. It is managed through corridor consults and brief joint rounds, and the specific efficiency of 2 senior attendings who have been doing this long enough to move through a shared case with the minimum necessary conversation, which is not coldness, but is something that 2 people develop when the alternative to efficiency is not something either of them is prepared to open. We had 2 years of professional adjacency. We had the 9 days 3 months ago. The 9 days were a patient named Evelyn, 68 years old, post-surgical cardiac repair with a pulmonary complication that put our management square on the seam between our departments, in a way that required both of us in the same room every morning, and sometimes every evening and twice through the night in the second week. Evelyn was a pleasant woman with strong opinions about hospital coffee, and a daughter who asked excellent questions and a clinical picture that required the specific kind of collaborative decision-making that cannot be done across a corridor consult, because the information is too granular and the risk calculus is too fine, and you need to be at the same table reading the same numbers in real time. We were at the same table for 9 days. I was professionally exemplary for 9 days. I have the clinical notes to prove it. Every decision was documented, every differential discussed with the appropriate cross-departmental precision. Every intervention justified in the chart with the clean logic of 2 senior attendings who were managing a complex case and nothing else. Evelyn recovered. The surgical team closed her case. She went home on a Thursday with her daughter and her opinions about hospital coffee, and 9 days of combined cardiac pulmonary management that had gone exactly as well as it should have. I went back to my floor. Vera went back to hers. And I had been on my own floor for 3 months, and I had not done anything with what 9 days in the same room had established, and neither had she. And I had become very good at not thinking about the specific reasons for that, which is to say, I had become very good at thinking about them constantly in the specific register of a person who is choosing, actively and deliberately, not to act on what they are thinking about. The new shared case came in at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. A 54-year-old post-transplant patient with a cardiac pulmonary presentation that was going to require both departments. And I had the case pulled and reviewed by 9, which is not unusual for me, and I had booked consultation room 4B for the 10 p.m. review before the day had fully started, which is also not unusual for me. And I arrived at the 10 p.m. review with my notes and my coffee and the specific dense alertness of a person who has been managing a full ward since 6 a.m. and is running on hospital caffeine and something else that she is not annotating. The first night went fine, clinically fine, professionally precise. We reviewed the chart. We discussed the differential. We established the monitoring parameters and the escalation criteria, and we split the morning call appropriately, and we were done by 11:30, and I walked back to the lift and did not think about the way the consultation room light makes Vera's angular face look exactly like it did in the 9 days, the specific blue-white of the overhead fluorescent on the sharp line of her jaw, the way she sits at a consultation table like she is the table's primary purpose. I did not think about this. I went home. I read a paper on post-transplant pulmonary complications. I slept. The second night, which is tonight, which is now, which is 10:55 p.m., I have been in consultation room 4B with Vera for 55 minutes, and the chart is on the screen, and there are 2 cups of coffee on the table that are both cold because neither of us has touched them since the first 20 minutes, and Vera has been clicking a pen for 12 of those minutes in a consistent rhythm at 4-second intervals. And I have been reading the chart with the thoroughness of a person who has read it twice before coming to this room and is now reading it a third time, because the alternative to reading the chart is acknowledging that I am in the same room as Vera at 10:55 p.m. with 2 cold cups of coffee and something that has not been named for 2 years. And the chart is still the safer object. The pen is not being used to write anything. I have noticed this. I have not said so, because saying so would be saying something. It is clicking at 4-second intervals. It has been clicking at 4-second intervals. And my respiratory rate, for reasons that I am firmly attributing to the recirculated hospital air and the ambient fatigue of a long shift and the clinical density of a post-transplant differential, is not at its resting baseline, and I know this, and Vera apparently also knows this, and the chart is on the screen. And I am being very thorough about the chart. Your respiratory rate is up. I don't look away from the screen. The screen is the correct place for my attention. The screen has the chart on it, which is the clinical reason both of us are in this room. It's not, I say. I've been watching it since 10:20. This is the thing about Vera. She says things like this in the same register she says everything else. Not softer, not edged. The same even precise clinical tone that she uses to describe an abnormal echocardiographic finding or recommend an intervention threshold change. And it lands in the same place, somewhere below the analytical level, somewhere the body processes before the mind weighs in. She has been watching my respiratory rate since 10:20. She has been watching the specific rise and fall of my chest through the opening of my clinical coat, the slate blouse moving with each breath. And she has been logging this, and she is telling me now at 10:55 p.m. like it is a clinical observation, and it is not a clinical observation. It is something else entirely, and we both know it, and the chart is still on the screen. My chest does the thing it has been doing, and I am aware of it, and I make a decision not to be aware of it, which does not work. The 4th and 5th intercostal space again. The specific quality of awareness that sits in the body before the mind gives it a name. That's not an appropriate observational parameter, I say. The pen clicks once, twice, then it stops. In 12 minutes of consistent rhythm, 4-second intervals, click and release, a metronome of a woman thinking about something that is not the chart. It stops. In the middle of my sentence, not at a natural pause, not at a period. In the middle of the sentence, the clicking stops, and the silence in consultation room, 4B, is specific and immediate and louder somehow than the ventilation system has been for the past 55 minutes. I finish the sentence anyway. My voice completes it without me. It is grammatically intact. It means nothing now. Vera does not answer. I look at the chart. The chart is on the screen. It is a good chart. It has excellent documentation. I have read it 3 times, and I know every number on it, and I am reading it again. Vera's forearm is 2 inches from mine on the table surface. I am aware of this with a specificity that I have been managing for 45 minutes, which is the length of time we have been sitting at the same long side of the consultation table rather than across from each other, an arrangement that made clinical sense when we were both reviewing the screen together and makes a different kind of sense now. The table surface is cool under my arm. Vera's forearm is not. At 2 inches of distance, the warmth differential is already a specific fact. The recycled hospital air cool around it, and her skin warmer than the room, and I can measure this from 2 inches away, which means my body has apparently been making measurements for 45 minutes without being asked to. The pen is not clicking. The ventilation hums. Somewhere down the corridor, the overnight staff make the distant noises of a hospital that does not stop, which is oddly comforting in the way that ambient evidence of other people's lives always is when you're in a room where something is about to happen and you're pretending it is not. We should get through the imaging review, I say. Yes, Vera says. Neither of us moves toward the keyboard. I pick up my pen, my own pen, which has been lying on my notebook for the past hour in the specific stillness of an object that its owner is not using because she is using her hands for nothing in particular. Which is unusual for me because I annotate. I always annotate. I have been annotating clinical material since the first year of medical school, and I cannot read a chart without a pen in my hand. And I click it once, and the sound it makes in the specific silence of a room where Vera's pen has just stopped is conspicuous enough that I immediately stop and put it down. Vera's head turns a degree. Not toward me, not enough to constitute a look. A degree. a fraction of a turn toward the sound or toward me, which is the same thing, and then not. I look at the screen. I look at the screen for 1 minute and 17 seconds by the clock on the wall, which I am tracking because I am a person who times things. And in those 1 minute and 17 seconds, my forearm does not move, and Vera's forearm does not move, and the distance between them stays at exactly 2 inches, and the warmth differential stays exactly as it is, and my respiratory rate does the specific thing I told Vera it was not doing, which I now regret because the accuracy of her observation is not something I can argue with and not something I can pretend I didn't hear her make. And then Vera reaches to the screen and closes the chart. The screen goes dark. The overhead fluorescent is still on. The corridor window is dark. The only light now is the overhead fluorescent and the 2 cold cups of coffee on the table and the closed chart and us. We're not finished, I say. The chart is. Her voice in the empty room is different from the daytime register. Lower, not quieter. Vera is never particularly quiet. She is precise, which is a different quality. But lower in the throat, a tone that belongs to a room with no one else in it, and it moves through something in my chest in a way that daytime Vera, corridor Vera, morning ward round Vera does not. And I have been keeping this observation in the correctly labeled file of things I am aware of and not acting on for 2 years. And the file is still there, but the chart is closed, and the screen is dark, and she has not moved her arm. She has not moved her arm. Since she reached to close the chart, a motion that brought her forearm in brief contact with mine, a degree of pressure at the outer edge of both our forearms that lasted approximately 2 seconds and was not accidental. The angle of the reach made it not accidental, and she knows I know this. Her arm has returned to the table surface and is still 2 inches from mine, and she is looking at the dark screen and she is not moving her arm. I am looking at the dark screen. We are 2 senior attending physicians at 11 p.m. in a consultation room, looking at a dark screen with our forearms 2 inches apart and 2 cold cups of coffee on the table, and the specific gravity of a room where the official reason for both of us to be here has just been closed. The case isn't closed, I say. No. So we're back here at 8 a.m. Yes. A pause. The ventilation hums. The corridor is dark. Somewhere down the hall, a cart wheels past and fades. Then closing the chart. Doesn't close the case, Vera says. I'm aware of the difference. I look at her then. The overhead light on her face at this angle, the blue-white fluorescent making the angles of her jaw and her cheekbones into something precise and architectural. The dark hair with a few strands fallen forward over her coat. The coat she removed in the second hour and has not put back on. The dark turtleneck underneath, close-fitting and precise. And the specific quality of her attention on the dark screen, which is the attention of a woman who is not looking at the screen. She is keeping her attention on the screen the way I have been keeping my attention on the chart. Vera, I say. She says nothing. But the stillness that has been calibrated stillness for 11+ months, the specific deliberate stillness of a woman who has decided what every part of her body is doing and is doing it, shifts by a fraction. Not a visible shift. I am a clinician. I notice fractions. Her shoulder is against mine, the fabric of her turtleneck against the fabric of my coat, a degree of pressure that is not accidental. Has not been accidental since the consultation table arrangement was established 45 minutes ago, and neither of us has moved to correct it, and the warmth of it is specific and consistent, and I have been annotating it without a pen. Say something, I say. I've been saying things, she says, for 2 years. This is not an inaccurate statement. Vera has, for 2 years, been saying things in the specific register of a woman who is saying them clinically and meaning them differently. And I have been receiving them in the clinical register and filing them elsewhere, and this has been a functional system in the specific way that systems function when both participants have agreed, without agreeing, to let them. I mean something else, I say. The warmth of her forearm closer now, not touching. The 2-inch distance at some point in the past 5 minutes has become something smaller, a ½ inch or less, the geometry of the consultation table, and 2 people sitting at the same side of it, having done what geometry does when neither person moves away. I know, she says, and she is looking at me now, not at the screen, at me. The shift is small, a few degrees of angle, a realignment of focus, and the effect of it is not small, is not proportional to the degrees involved because Vera's attention as a physical event has a location and it lands in my sternum with the specific precision of a woman who has been not looking at me for 2 years and has just stopped that. I don't look away. I am making a specific choice not to look away, and it is costing something, and I am paying it. The 9 days, Vera says. She doesn't finish it. She doesn't need to. The 9 days. The 9 days in this hospital, in room 3 of Ward C, at this same kind of table, reviewing this same kind of chart, the specific proximity that a complex shared case requires, and what that proximity had been establishing in the room between us with the patient asleep and the night staff past the door and both of us at the same table at 11 p.m., looking at a chart that we were looking at with approximately 40% of our attention. The 9 days that ended when Evelyn went home and we went back to our separate floors, and I stood in the corridor outside her room and started a sentence, and then completed it differently. The 9 days that I have not done anything about for 3 months, because the 3 months have been a very functional system of not doing anything about them, and the system is in the room with me right now, and Vera has just said 2 words of it and stopped. I know, I say. The second time tonight, I have said that about something that is not the chart. I am aware of this. Vera is aware of this. The room has been a very small and specific awareness for the past 20 minutes, and it is smaller now, and the forearms are not 2 inches apart anymore. And her shoulder against mine is not accidental, and has not been accidental, and the pen is not clicking. The pen has been on the table since she set it down. Not clicking, not being held, just on the table. And the silence of it after 12 minutes of consistent rhythm has been its own sound, its own presence, and I have been aware of it the way you are aware of a sound that stops in the middle of a night that is otherwise quiet. Vera's clinical coat is on the chair behind her. Her turtleneck is close-fitting and dark, and the overhead light makes the angles of her collar and her jaw into something I am no longer filing in the correct location. My own coat is slipping off one shoulder. I have not adjusted it. The slate blouse is visible at the coat's opening, and the second button has been working loose since hour 2, and I have not buttoned it, which is a choice I have been making passively for the past 40 minutes and have not examined. Stop, Vera says. I am not doing anything. I look at her. Your hands, she says. I look at my hands. My right hand is on the pen. My pen, not hers. Fingers tight around it in the specific grip of a person who needs something to hold, which is not a grip I had decided to take, which means my body had decided to take it while I was managing other information. I put the pen down. The table is quiet. Both pens on the table, neither clicking. Look at me, she says. The same tone, the same precision. Not soft. Vera is not soft. Vera is the woman who 3 months ago stood at the foot of Evelyn's bed and delivered a clinical assessment that rearranged the treatment plan so calmly and so completely that the surgical resident had to write it down twice because the first time he had been too busy processing the delivery to write accurately. Not soft, precise. And what precision does in Vera's voice in a room this quiet, at this hour, at this proximity, is a specific physical event that my body has been cataloging for 2 years and is now cataloging in real time. I look at her. Her chair is turned fully toward me. At some point in the past few minutes, the 15-degree angle of her chair has become something else, turned fully, so we are facing each other on the same side of the consultation table, our knees close in the space between the chairs, her hands at the edge of the table near my waist where the blouse has come untucked from the dark trousers, not touching, hovering in the specific quality of not yet that is its own form of contact, a form that my skin is already processing without waiting for the contact itself. I can smell her from here. Cedar and cold linen always, the specific precision of a scent that is not decorative but is simply what she is. And underneath it something warmer now, something that is the hour and the room and the particular warmth of a body that has been sitting close to another body for 55 minutes in a room where the clinical reason for proximity has long since been accounted for. The warmth of her hands not yet touching my waist is a distinct temperature differential. The cool, recycled hospital air between my blouse and the space above it, and her hands not yet at the untucked hem, and I can feel the warmth of them. A body's heat at an inch's distance is a specific sensation that my skin has apparently been mapping since the consultation table arrangement was established, and the map is very detailed. Cass, she says. The sound of my name in her voice, in this room at this hour, does something to my chest that I am no longer going to characterize as a respiratory response. There is a tightening at the lower part of my sternum that is not respiratory and is not cardiac, and is the specific anatomy of 2 years of professional precision finally running out of the room to maintain itself in. Her hands settle at my waist. The warmth of them through the slate blouse at the untucked hem is specific and located and a degree warmer than I expected, which is not something I had calculated, which means my body had been calculating a predicted temperature, and the actual temperature exceeded it, and this excess is its own information, and my skin receives it with an attention that my mind is only just catching up to. She holds still, both hands at my waist, through the blouse, holding still, not directing, not moving. Just present with a deliberate and specific weight, and the deliberateness of the stillness is its own message. A clinical observation made with palms and warmth and the specific weight of a woman who has decided what she is doing and is doing it without haste. The sound Vera makes is not a sound. It is the specific quality of a breath not arriving on schedule, a half-second delay, the briefest interruption of the even clinical breathing she has been maintaining for the past hour. And I hear it in the low quiet of the room the way I hear the pen stopping, the way I hear everything in this room that deviates from baseline, because I have been tracking her baseline for 2 years with the involuntary precision of a body that has made its assessments and filed them and is no longer willing to misfile them. I put my hands on the table, not on her. On the table flat, the cool surface under my palms, the specific proprioceptive anchor of something stable and horizontal, because my body is in the process of updating several significant pieces of prior information and needs a moment. I'm going to need you to say something, I say. I've said several things tonight. In the other register, I say. Her hands at my waist do not move. The warmth stays. The deliberate weight stays. Her face at this proximity is the overhead fluorescent on the angular precision of her, the dark eyes with their specific quality of stillness that is not stillness, the particular forward fall of a few dark strands over her coat collar, and the look she's giving me is not the clinical look and not the professional look, and is something I have been miscategorizing for 2 years and am now in the process of correctly filing. The 9 days, she says, and her voice is lower again, the low register of a room with no one else in it, were a 9-day clinical record of something that was already documented before them. I breathe. The 4th and 5th intercostal space. Not controlled, not managed. How long before, I say. Table 7, she says. The Autumn Cardiopulmonary Overlap Symposium. 2 years and 4 months ago. Aldrich Conference Room B, 3rd row, seating assignment revision, Dr. Ellison's mandatory cross-departmental mixing. And the woman who sat down across from me and said, I know your paper on CTEPH misclassification, and who had already read it, had already used it, it is absolutely clear to me now it is a differential diagnosis with no remaining alternatives, already made her own catalogued observation that she had been storing in the same wrongly labeled file. That's a long chart, I say. It is, she says. I've been thorough. The dry precision of it, in Vera's voice, at this proximity, at this hour, does the specific thing to my chest that I have been ascribing to ambient fatigue and clinical density for 2 years, and it is not ambient fatigue, and I know this, and I am done mislabeling the file. I am looking at her. She is looking at me. The overhead light is on, and the corridor window is dark, and both cold cups of coffee are on the table, and the pen is on the table. And the chart is closed, and there is no clinical reason for either of us to still be in this room, and we are both still in this room. And the warmth of her hands through the slate blouse at my waist is one of the most specifically located sensations I have experienced in a consultation room, which is not a high bar, and is in this case not the relevant measure. Vera, I say. Yes, she says. Just yes. The syllable of a woman who is answering a question that has not yet been fully asked, which means she knows what the question is, which means she has been waiting for it, which means 2 years of professionally precise not asking have been 2 years of her knowing exactly what the question was going to be, and waiting for the room where it would run out of reasons not to be asked. I look at her for a long moment. The clock on the wall behind her reads 11:08. The consultation room is exactly as it has been. Rectangular table, screen dark, overhead fluorescent, corridor window dark, 2 cold cups, 2 pens. The room has not changed. We have been changing in it for 2 years, and then more rapidly for the past hour, and now more rapidly still. I stand up. Her hands leave my waist as I stand, the warmth releasing, the specific location of it cooling immediately in the recycled air, and I feel the absence of the warmth as a physical fact. The exact location where her palms had been, the inch-wide band of blouse fabric at my waist, that specific location going from warm and held to cool and released. And the release is not relief. The release is its own particular absence that my body notes with the same thoroughness it has been noting everything. I push my chair back a foot, and then I stop, because I am not leaving, I am just standing. In the consultation room is a specific geometry of a rectangular table and 2 chairs, and the wall beside the dark corridor window, and Vera standing now also, having risen in the same motion, and the overhead light makes the angles of her face, and the dark turtleneck and the coat on the chair, all one specific image that I am not going to file anywhere incorrectly. We are standing at the same side of the consultation table. The wall is 3 feet behind me. Vera is less than that in front. "The corridor," she says. 3 months ago. I know what she is referring to. The end of Evelyn's case, the 9th day, the moment outside Evelyn's room when I had started a sentence. Had started it with the opening words of something true, something I had constructed in 9 days of building it. A sentence that would have named something, and had then heard myself completing it differently, had redirected the sentence into something clinical and neutral and documentable, and had walked to the lift and had gone back to my floor. She had been watching. She had been listening for the sentence. She had been listening for the thing I was going to say before I said something else. And she had noted what I said instead, and she had filed it, and she has apparently been keeping it in the chart for 3 months. Say what you were going to say in the corridor 3 months ago. The room is very quiet. The ventilation hums. The corridor is dark. The specific blue-white of the overhead fluorescent is on her face and on the sharp angles of her jaw and on the few dark strands fallen forward, and she is very close, and she is very still, and she is waiting with the complete and unhurried attention of a woman who has been thorough about this for a long time. I open my mouth. I say the first word. It is her name. Vera's jaw shifts, a small, precise movement, a fractional adjustment of the muscle at her jaw, the only external evidence of something that has stopped being held. And it is specific and visible. And I see it, and it is the most important diagnostic sign I have observed in a very long time. Her composure has been clinical and complete and architectural since the first day I sat across from her at table 7, and it has just made, in this small, precise anatomical location, a crack. She moves, not a sweep, not a collapse. The first thing she does is one hand at the back of my neck, sliding up under the honey blonde waves, warm, warmer than expected. The temperature differential is specific and located at the back of my neck, at the hairline, the warmth of her palm arriving against skin that has gone alert for it. And she holds, not directing, not pulling, just the weight of her hand there, held, present, the deliberate weight of a woman who has made a decision and is executing it without haste. The second thing she does is step forward, closing the distance between her body and mine, and my back meets the consultation room wall beside the dark corridor window, and neither of us has turned the overhead light off. And in the full blue-white clinical light of consultation room 4B at 11:10 p.m., she looks at me with the dark, deep-set precision of her eyes from a distance that has no professional category. "Continue," she says. Her voice is low. The low register of the room, lower still now, and what it does to the space behind my sternum is specific and involuntary, and I am no longer going to describe it incorrectly. I was going to say, I say, that the 9 days were, and she is very close, the cedar and cold linen and the warm layer underneath it at this proximity, the scent of her at this range, and I have been noting this for 2 years, and filing it wrong, and the file is open now, and everything in it is being re-indexed in real time. We're not enough. Not enough. The sentence is 4 words, and it is the most precise thing I have said in this room tonight, and it is more precise than anything I said in 9 days of clinical documentation. Her mouth is at my collarbone, not rushed, not swept. The first thing she did was one hand at the back of my neck, and the second was step forward, and the third is her mouth at my collarbone. At the opening of the slate blouse, where the third button hasn't been buttoned, the ivory silk of the slip bra a degree cooler than my skin above it, and the contrast of it, her mouth's warmth, the silk cooler, my skin between, her breath warm against the specific hollow of my collarbone, is a sensation that lives at the sternum and radiates outward with a thoroughness that my specialty is equipped to map anatomically and is not doing so. My hands find the lapels of her turtleneck, not directing, not pulling, just the specific fabric between my fingers, the fine dark wool of it and the warmth of her underneath it, and the act of finally holding something I have been very precisely not reaching for 2 years. And the sensation of it in my hands is a release that is also an arrival. Her hand at the back of my neck holds still, warm, present. Not the hand of a woman who has lost control, the hand of a woman who has chosen to let go of something, and that distinction is specific and visible, even now, even here, the specific quality of a decision being executed. The sentence, she says, against my collarbone. All of it. That's all of it, I say. No, it isn't. She is right. The sentence has more. The sentence is, the 9 days were not enough, and the 2 years were not enough, and the specific, precise, professional language we have been conducting ourselves in for 2 years is a language I am fluent in and would like to stop speaking for the remainder of this evening if you are amenable, which I am noting from your current location you appear to be. And I would like to be thorough about this the way I am thorough about everything, which is to say, I would like to take a significant amount of time. I don't say this. I say, 2 years of not enough. Her breathing changes, not sharp. The specific sound of a breath that has been held for a considerable time releasing, low, almost inaudible, the kind of sound a body makes when it has been maintaining a specific posture, and releases it. And I hear it in the low quiet of the room the way I hear everything in this room, with the specific attention of a body that has been tracking her baseline for years and knows what deviation looks like. Her hand at the back of my neck, thumb at the hairline, holds the specific weight of a decision that has been made and is not being reconsidered. The overhead fluorescent is still on. The corridor outside is dark and quiet. The pen is on the consultation table. Last click at 10:32 p.m., which I know because I noted it the way I note everything about Vera, with the involuntary clinical attention of a body that has been making a diagnosis for 2 years and arrived at the differential with no remaining alternatives. 2 cold cups of coffee on the table. The dark screen with the closed chart, her mouth at my collarbone and her hand at the back of my neck, and the specific warmth of her through the dark turtleneck where my hands are at her lapels, and the wall behind me in the consultation room light above, and the ventilation humming, and the distance between my body and hers, which is not a distance anymore, and which is, it turns out, the most precisely located thing I have charted in 2 years of thorough and continuously mislabeled documentation. I say her name again, not a question, not a request, a diagnosis, the accurate one. The one I have been working toward from the first morning in Aldrich Conference Room B, from Table 7, from every corridor consult and shared ward round and 9-day clinical record, from every click of a pen in a quiet room and every cold cup of coffee and every half-degree turn of attention, from every 2-inch forearm distance and every shoulder contact and every moment of calibrated stillness that was not stillness. She makes a sound in her throat, low, brief, the specific sound of a controlled register releasing. It rearranges something in my chest that I am not going to put back. The consultation room at 11:22 p.m. is a specific space. Rectangular table with 2 cold cups of coffee, the screen dark with the closed chart, the clinical overhead light on because neither of us has turned it off. 2 senior attending physicians doing nothing clinical at the wall beside the corridor window with their coats in various states of previous locations. This is the room where the professional premise ran out. It ran out at exactly the moment Vera set the pen down. Afterward, when the room is quiet again in a different way, the quiet of a room where something has been said that cannot be unsaid, and several things have been not said that are also permanent, the specific quiet of 2 people sitting at the same side of a consultation table with 2 cold cups of coffee between them and a closed chart and nothing else. Vera reaches across the table. She picks up her pen. She clicks it once. And she puts it in the breast pocket of my clinical coat, not in hers, not on the table. In my pocket. Without explanation, without annotation, the specific weight of it in the breast pocket, the small metal cylinder, her pen that has been clicking in this room for 12 minutes at 4-second intervals and then stopping. And she puts it in my pocket and says nothing about this, and I say nothing about this, and the room is quiet. The shared case is still open. We are back in this room at 8 a.m. The case has a chart that is closed for tonight and will be open in 9 hours, and will require both of us at this table with the clinical precision that this hospital and this patient and this specialty demand, and we are both going to do that. Neither of us says what this changes. I look down at the breast pocket of my coat where the pen is, the specific small weight of it. Her pen in my pocket, a piece of her equipment in my possession, which is not a clinical notation. 8 a.m., I say. 8 a.m., she says. I look at her. She looks at me. The overhead fluorescent is still on, and her face in its light is the angular, precise face I have been cataloging since Table 7, with the involuntary attention of a body that has known for 2 years what it knew. And she is looking at me with the dark eyes that are not still now, that have not been calibrated still since she set the pen down, that are something else now. Something that I am going to spend some time with in the correct location of whatever file it belongs to. We leave the cups on the table, both cold, both untouched since the second hour. A specific domestic fact in a clinical space. 2 cold cups of coffee in a consultation room, left the way you leave things you'll come back to, the way you leave a chart open when it isn't finished. The door of consultation room 4B closes behind us, and the corridor is quiet, and the hospital overnight makes its distant sounds. And in the breast pocket of my coat, the pen sits with a specific weight that I am not going to annotate. Some things the body keeps its own chart on. Some charts you stop mislabeling.